Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Town of Rutland, Office of the Select Board virtual meeting. It is Monday, June 15th, 2020. It is just about 6:01 p.m. I hereby call this meeting to order. Is there anyone who would like to either read the announcement or waive reading of the open meeting recording statement?
I'm happy to waive it.
Thank you. Could I get a second on that?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion on the waiver? That's the statement that you read at the beginning of our agenda relative to our open meeting recordings. Hearing none, all in favor?
Stillings, aye.
Residy, aye.
Whiteman, aye.
Wayne, you're muted.
Dib, aye. I'm going to let Wayne.
Walker, aye.
Thank you. That probably took longer than just reading it, but hopefully you have to get better at that next time. We have Treasury Warrant 26 and payroll.
Motion to approve. Stillings, motion to approve. Treasury warrant 26 and payroll.
Residy, second.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor?
Residy, aye.
Stillings, aye.
Sheila, Jeff's hand is up.
Jeff, did you have a question or are you voting? Sorry.
I already voted aye, but just put I do have a question with this. I was gonna ask if we had any department heads present looking at the agenda, and if it's possible to maybe rearrange so that we can accommodate the department heads that might be online with us to get them up front.
Okay. Yeah, we also have quite a few people here for public comment, but we're in the middle of the vote. I think I heard Wayne Wade. Could you just say that again for the record?
Walker, aye.
Thank you. And Dib, aye, so that's unanimous. Just going to power through, Jeff, with that one other small thing. So we have the minutes of the June 1st, 2020 virtual meeting of the Select Board.
Stillings, motion to approve the minutes of June 1st.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Residy, aye.
Stillings, aye.
Whiteman, aye.
Did you get me? Walker, aye.
Thank you. Dib, aye, unanimous. So on our agenda next, we have public comment. We have several people who I believe are public comment, but we also have both chiefs as well as Dan Haynes, our town accountant. Is there anyone who, and now I would like to announce that for public comment, please make your interest in speaking known through the process that we have listed, the two options. Either you have emailed rutlandmapubliccomment@gmail.com or submitting questions through the Zoom platform. We do return to public comment typically a couple of times just to check in and see if anybody has asked. I believe, let's see. So, Jeff, were you looking to get something specific out of the way?
No, I just wanted to accommodate the, I mean, we have our town accountant here and our two chiefs, if they could be brought to the front of the agenda so they can get on with their busy work.
So with the exception of the public safety recognition under new business, are either of the chiefs here for anything else that you'd like to stay for the whole meeting, or would you like us to take that out of order?
Through the chair, before we get that, I noticed how Chief Knight had included some correspondence in one of the agenda items that I think warrants a discussion. So I think we're going to have to talk that one through. So okay. I just think that it's going to be a longer conversation than just kind of knocking it out of the way, you know.
All right. So let me move that over to Dan. Dan, we've got obviously town meeting warrant article recommendations and something that you asked very, I think today about the approval of the 1/12 spending contingency plan that got added at the last minute. Is that something you'd like us to try to take out of order so we can get you moving?
If you can, but if you can't accommodate that, it's fine. I won't be long. So.
Okay. All right. Unless I hear anything from the board, what I'd like to do is go down to new business number 133. That's the approved 1/12 spending contingency plan for FY21. Dan, we're going to hand it over to you, and I believe there is a document that the board has in its Google Drive.
And I will say too, this is something Dan's been working on since we started to plan for town meeting. It just needs approval so that Dan can submit it to the DOR.
So section 5 of chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020 regarding and relating to COVID-19 authorized towns to deficit spend. There is no provision for towns to deficit spend. Once you get to the new fiscal year, you're supposed to have a budget in place. But given these times, we're not sure if we're going to have a budget. If something happens with the town meeting, we wouldn't be able to spend money effective July 1st without this deficit spending authorization. So really what I did is I went through, looked at last July, what we spent, looked at the budget for this year that we're anticipating voting on, and came up with a monthly expenditure disbursement plan for July. It does take into account a payment to Wachusett. That's why if you look at the total for the general fund, it's $4,738,587. But we would have one assessment payment to Wachusett in that July timeframe. We also pay our pension assessment and liability insurance in a lump sum upfront to obtain a discount. The discount can be substantial, $8,000 to $9,000 for the pension assessment. It's better than the interest you're going to receive in the bank. Let me put it that way. So that is what we have stored, and most towns do this. They pay these upfront to obtain those discounts. So really what needs to happen is this monthly expenditure plan for July has to be approved by the select board. The vote only needs to indicate that the board approves the plan being submitted. And then the clerk of the board must certify that a vote to approve the plan was properly taken. Once that happens, I upload the document into the state's gateway for Department of Local Services. The Department of Local Services director will look it over and then give us authorization to spend effective July 1 based on that plan if we need to. I mean, if we have town meeting and we have a budget, we don't need to do this. But they are suggesting anybody that has a town meeting scheduled after June 15th to submit this monthly spending plan. So that is why we are doing this.
So what the process would be is we have a general vote certification form that Margaret already has set up in the office. So I would fill it out with the wording of the motion that was passed, who made the motion, who seconded it, and then Leah, you would have to come in and just sign it, and then we'd get that to Dan, and that's how that goes.
So what everybody should be looking at is the little Excel spreadsheet that was sent to us earlier today. And that's the monthly expenditure plan, July 2020. Anybody have any questions for Dan?
Joe has a hand up. No.
It's not very detailed, nor does it need to be very detailed. It's really an estimate in a mechanism so that we can start spending money in the event that we don't have a town meeting or a budget before July 1st.
Joe, you had a question?
Just a quick question. I didn't get a copy of it, Dan. At least I don't think I did. What about the assessment to the Upper Blackstone? That has to be paid.
Yeah, I have $99,472 built into that
Great.
enterprise spending plan.
Thank you.
Thanks for checking. If there is no discussion, I would entertain a motion to approve that the clerk be authorized to sign.
I'm so moved. I will make that motion to authorize the clerk to sign as presented.
Walker, second.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Or City, aye.
Walker, aye.
Stillings, aye.
Waitman, aye.
Dib, aye. Thank you so much, Dan.
All right, thank
Hopefully
you.
We won't need it, as you said.
Yes, hopefully we will not need it.
Is there anything else we need you for, Dan, that you know of?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Moving forward to Mitch's point, we do possibly need the chiefs for a few other things. We do have quite a few people here. Mike, has anyone stepped forward for public comment yet?
Yes, Sean Moore.
Okay. So we have Sean listed under public comment specifically. There is also a piece of, oh no, did you put it under the correspondence, Mike?
No, that was put under the, it's in your folders under public comment.
Okay. All right. So if everybody wants to open that up under public comment, you've got document received from Sean. So Sean, you are recognized. Go ahead, name and address.
Sean,
Yes,
would you
Sean
like,
Moore, Hudson Avenue. Did you?
do you want your video on?
Oh, yes, I. Yeah.
All right.
Mike, since that was put on the agenda, my statement, is there a way you could bring that up for everybody to see?
Sure, if that's.
Is on the agenda?
Well,
Because I know sometimes I mumble, and it'll be easier for public to see it as well. My video started?
Yep.
Okay. I'll start with that right up. Awesome. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and read this straight out just to make it simpler and straight to the point. Due to the technical difficulties the town had during the meeting held on May 4th, 2020, we want to say thank you for the opportunity to address you all. I would like to explain further our reasons why we feel that we, Mass Home Growers of Rutland, Massachusetts, should be awarded opportunity in the town of Rutland. I once heard a representative from the Cannabis Control Commission explain the types of people that they wanted in the Massachusetts cannabis industry. She stated that the commission wanted local businesses to be owned by local people who are involved in their community and are willing to give back to their community. When I decided to reach out for what she was advocating, I realized that I could not do this on my own, and I wanted local people to be involved that have the best interests in their communities, in their town. So I asked Joe Delaquila. Joe was once a successful businessman, and he has given voluntarily to this town for many years. Joe has also, like me, served our country in the armed forces, and I believe he will always have the best interest of this town. I then asked Skip Clark, who also happens to be a successful business owner, has given voluntarily to this town. These two men, I trust, will do their best in this business, but also by ensuring the best interest is kept, ensuring the revenues that are generated to be given to this town, which is going to be quite substantial. We're offering 8% of our yearly sales, which is 5% higher than recommended by the state. We're doing this to ensure that our community will be well funded. Joe, Skip, and I are already well established in our community as local taxpayers. We are very grateful that the town decided to go into negotiation with us for cultivation, but in the grand scheme of things, it makes no sense not to allow us to manufacture and sell what we grow. This will greatly ensure the success of our business and not to have to rely on businesses outside of Rutland. Yes, the other company is from Barre and is local in Massachusetts, but they are not from Rutland, thus truly keeping it local. They already have multiple retail facilities in Massachusetts, as well as multiple cultivation areas throughout the state. Our investments are exclusively Rutland. Our focus is exclusively Rutland. They are committed to larger cities with a responsibility to those cities. Our responsibility will be only to Rutland. Please, I implore you to reconsider going into negotiations and sign the host community agreement with our local company. KP Law has previously reviewed our HCAs and affirmed it is a good deal for our town. Rutland is a growing town. Please allow some of Rutland's own to grow as well. So we are asking this board not to sign the HCA of the Berry Company. We ask instead that you as select members, along with the town administrator, sign the host community agreements with Mass Home Growers. Many times the board has openly advocated for small businesses and local startups, and it appeared to be against the multi-million-dollar corporations that come into small towns and take over. Yet when the time came, you decided not to back it up and voted for the non-local business. I implore you to rescind your decision at this board meeting and make a motion to sign the HCA on cultivation, manufacturing, and retail for this locally started, locally owned company. And keep in mind that locally owned, locally grown, and locally sold, we feel is best for the town. Thank you. And I was told maybe some people may have emailed. Mike, has there been any emails sent to you in favor of keeping this local?
I've received 2 emails related to this letter.
2 is better than none. Could you read them, please?
If the chair,
Um,
with that, I can.
okay, so just for the record, they were received obviously after the posting deadline. Mike, were they addressed to the board?
One was addressed to local business owners. The other was addressed to myself.
If anybody on the board has an issue, otherwise Mike can read the emails he received. Okay, go ahead.
Excuse me 1 second while I pull those up. I received one at 11:09 p.m. last night from Mr. Tim Narwald. Mike, I wanted to let you know that I am in favor of issuing a cannabis permit to a local company instead of a large outside corporation. I believe that supporting our local businesses is very important to the growth of Rutland and increasing Rutland's economic well-being. I want my local government to support any local cannabis permits to local companies. Thank you for your time and consideration on this issue. Regards, Tim Narwald, private citizen. And the other one I received was from Ms. Kelsey Cobb. Again, this is not addressed to the board. It's addressed to Rutland business owners. A message to all my fellow Rutland citizens and supporters of local businesses and startups. I ask that you please write your select board members and let them know that you are in favor of any and all licenses and businesses involving the sale of cannabis and be granted to Rutland citizen applicants before outside non-local corporations. A local corporation, Mass Home Growers LLC, a business owned by myself and 2 other Rutland residents, has applied for the opportunity to grow, manufacture, and sell cannabis and cannabis-related products in Rutland. The select board members have chosen to go into negotiations with non-Rutland large corporations who already has multiple dispensaries located in the state instead of supporting Mass Home Growers, a local startup. I beg you to email the select board members and the town administrator to not sign any contracts that aren't from Rutland residents and to let them know that you want locally owned, locally grown, and locally manufactured products. Kelsey Cobb.
Thank you. So I'd present to the board a couple things. We are in public comment. We have had through correspondence that we did receive in time, our request within the correspondence for a reconsideration. The board voted unanimously when it awarded negotiation of the HCA. And that would mean that any member could technically make a motion to reconsider. I'll leave that there. If the board have any comments or questions, this would be the time.
Mitch, I see your hand is up. Did I miss it from earlier, or is that there for a reason?
Oh, that was there from earlier, Mike.
Could you ask if there is anybody here in the public also has any that would happen to have any comment on this? Because there are quite a few people here for public comment, and they may be here for that subject.
Mike, has anybody else indicated public comment?
I do not see any other hands raised. If you would like to participate in public comment, you can go down to the bottom of your screen where it says reactions. and click on either of those two reaction buttons that pop up. Those will show to my screen. We have Mr. Willard Cannon who would like to speak.
Go ahead, Mr. Cannon, name and address.
Willard Cannon, 16 Fernwood Drive. I'd like to see a local company be considered very highly for this cannabis thing, for selling it. If they can grow it here, they should be able to sell it here.
Thank you. Is there any comment from the board? And Mike, can you continue to just keep us updated on if we see any comment requests coming in?
Again, if you would like to participate, you can either email rutlandpubliccomment@gmail.com, or you can go to the bottom of your screen where it says reactions. It looks like a smiley face with a plus sign, and click on either of those two icons there, and those will pop up on the screen here.
All right, last call. Does the board have any comment, anything they would like to say or take action on? All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone here for public comment for another topic?
Sheila, through the chair, somebody had reached out to me earlier that wanted to speak tonight in public comment, and I kind of explained the process. I think she's here with us tonight, Jess Gannon. In full disclosure, we were neighbors for a long time, so I just want to introduce her and through the chair, if it's all right to let her kind of do the thing.
So Jessica, if you heard, you're going to just give your name and address, and then you are now recognized by the chair and you are able to speak.
Jessica, you are muted, so just make sure you click on mute before you talk.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. My name is Jessica Apamo Gannon, and I am on 8 Brittenell Drive in Rutland, and my husband is here, so we're kind of, yeah.
Hi.
Yeah, Timothy Gannon. So, so do I go ahead and present my comments? Okay. So today I reached out to Mish, who was very, very receptive, given the fact that I just interrupted his day at work, but he listened to me, and I really appreciated that. And I am here to just, raise some items that I thought would be appropriate for such a meeting, and then kind of just talk about what the next steps would be going from here. I am a Black woman living in Rutland with Black children. And given everything that is going on right now, I just thought that this is a window of opportunity to come and talk about some of the issues that have come up in the past and are ongoing, and just to hear out, to see what you think and what the town administration is thinking on kind of just addressing some things that have come up in the past, and just given the wave that is going on in the country right now. And again, I don't want to take it as a wave because it's the life I live, so it's not a trend. And so I just want to make sure that I'm using that word just to communicate for now. And there have been some very personal situations that myself and my family have encountered in this town. And I know about 10 Black families in this town, and they've all been very concerned about several things they've encountered individually in different environments. And so we just thought to come up and just engage in a conversation, and just to, to see what are some things that we could do moving forward as a community. Just, my husband was born and raised in Holden, and therefore this is a community that we were aware of. So when we moved here, we were not blind to where we were moving. So so we're just, we just want to have conversations that are unrelated to that.
Mention the census numbers.
Oh yeah, my husband is saying to mention the census number. So some other things, I'm a scientist myself, and I believe in numbers. And so whenever I want to talk about something, I look at numbers. And so one of the things that really caught my attention a few days ago was when I did a search for demographics for Rutland. It shows 98 or 97 point something white, 2 point something Asian, 0.0% Black. And so that made me wonder whether I exist or not. And I know more than 50 Black people who live here. And that was very, very concerning to me also in relation to what has happened to my son, who one time in 1 week, he was pulled over by 2 policemen for nothing. And they both were questioning that he lives here. And so now looking at those statistics, I see where the policemen were coming from, because in their statistics, there's 0 Black people. And so when my son said, I'm driving home, they both were like, what do you mean you're driving home? And so, my 2 brothers, last year I lost my little brother. And so my 2 brothers who live in Connecticut had come to me, to my house to pray with me, because we lost our brother who was 32 years old, heart attack. And therefore they were pulled over and the police drove with them to my driveway to call me to verify that they know me and they're coming to visit me. So I come from a family where we are very polite, very personable. And I keep thinking that because of that, they were able to get away without intimidation or profiling, so to speak. But I always wonder, I always worry about what would happen if, for example, one of them lost their temper and maybe, you know. So those are the kinds of things I just, looking at what is going on, I was like, you know what? I wanted to come to the police station last year because when it happened to my son twice, I decided not to. And this is a child who was a football captain in a private school. He did well. He's won awards in Massachusetts. So I know he's a good kid and he's in college doing very well. For him to be pulled over, to be questioned about whether he was smoking marijuana and things, my son was like, Mom, why would the police ask me if I was driving under the influence? I don't do that. So those are the kinds of things that I just wanted to bring to your attention and to be like, what are we doing? I personally, I don't feel comfortable to jog in my neighborhood. Not that anything has happened, but given everything that is happening, I am worried. And I've lived in America for most of my life, even though my accent sounds different. But our kids are grown. We have a 24-year-old, we have a 20-year-old, and we have a 12-year-old. And to feel that I'm paying taxes in a town where I feel uncomfortable to jog is not good. It's not rational maybe, but it's just the atmosphere. And those are the things we are talking about. We are just wondering what we can do to make the Black people in this community to feel comfortable and okay to engage in things. A family member told me that, not a family member, one of the group people that are in this who are Black in this town told me that the other day when I called her to talk with her about a few things, and she said this morning they were jogging, her and her husband, but 5 minutes into the jog, they became so anxious that they had to go back home. And I said, I am sorry you felt that, because I feel the same way. And it might not be rational because nobody has been shot in Rutland, but it's those mistakes that if it happens, it's not going to be taken back. I've engaged the school system in Wachusett school districts in so many areas because I'm an administrator myself. I work for the Department of Education in evaluating exams and looking at exams to make sure they are racially appropriate. So with that kind of expertise, I've been able to engage with the school administration in other areas where some of my Black friends have felt that their kids have been treated differently in the schools. So I just felt it was time to speak up and no longer be silent.
Jessica, we really appreciate you coming here. I think you are appropriately looking for action items, and I'm struggling with what the board tonight will be able to tell you definitively. If any board members would like to respond, Jessica, I can also tell you, I think we tried at one point through one of the schools to do community suppers, And of course, the timing was never right. And now, of course, we can't do them. I sometimes wonder if that's one of those things that's a good thing to start grassroots to get people to know each other a little better in a town the size of ours. But that's not what you came to this board for. And so I want to be able to give you something to go away with. Anyone?
I think through the chair, because I have really been thinking about this, Jess, since you called me. And maybe it's worth Mike maybe sharing some ideas with the town administrator as to maybe what we can do, what would be appropriate. I'm thinking about when I worked for the city of Worcester, we had, a commission on the status of women. We had, different commissions that got public members together to talk about these issues. I'm not sure if something like that would be appropriate, but I think that we can look at some communities around us and kind of what they do and maybe toss around some best practice. If that's something that the board would like to go, perhaps.
Just one thing I'd like to add to that too, Jessica. Thank you very much for coming tonight. I'm the town administrator for the, I don't have it written where my name where everyone else has select board next to their name, but my titles, I run the town's account, so I couldn't change the name. But I can tell you that's one of the reasons why we were pushing the census so much this year, because the census, at least the one, I pulled up the census as you were talking to see which, because we do a town census annually, and I've got to see what questions are run there because that's run through the town clerk's office, but the US Census is actually a self-reported one. So it's the people who actually go and fill the cards out themselves. I had two, I call them census trackers. It's the people that go around and go to the doors and say, hey, have you filled out your census yet and stuff. And that all got interrupted this year because of the pandemic. So now one of the conversations that we keep having in at least my office is how do we actually get the census taken by people, because it is important, because that's how you find out what your community is actually made up of and who is makes up each puzzle piece that makes us the town of Rutland. I get it. I'm Hispanic too, and I've seen it with things from my family too. But I can say it's something that we are always working on. I can say Chief Monaco is always trying to keep top notch with the police department, making sure everyone has the proper training and skills that they need. And I had a conversation about this stuff with him recently with everything going on, and I really think he's in the right direction there, and he can speak at some point too, and we can set up something with you and I and him if you'd like to. And but to come on a Zoom call like this in an unfamiliar situation where everything's just different in general, and then to do that, it takes a lot of courage. So thank you very much for doing that. And I do see the chief did put his video on as well.
Okay. Just so you know, Nick, I'm a college professor, so I speak at big forums. I'm a board of director in so many organizations. So when something is dear to me, I'll speak even if my voice is shaking. So I'm fine. If there are any questions, I'm fine to respond. And thank you though for acknowledging that.
Chief, go ahead.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you for coming on tonight. I would be very happy if you'd stop by the station someday. We could talk about concerns you have. My voice is gone tonight, so excuse me for that. But yeah, happily address any concerns you have about safety, about the town, about demographics, police procedure, excuse me, anything. So we can also, I can go through the log. We can look up those motor vehicle stops you referenced, and I mean, this is not the right forum for it, but I can guarantee that they were not race-based.
Sure. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I just want you to know that I was cognizant of the fact that we lost a very valuable member of the police force. And that is why I didn't walk to your office, because I just felt that that is a huge loss that, the town is going through. And that's why I held myself actually for this time. So thank you. I'll be reaching out.
No, thank you. You're welcome to come up anytime.
Leah, go ahead.
Thank you, Jessica, for coming on and reaching out to Mitch and coming on for this. And Mitch, Chief Monaco, if you're still here, I don't know if it's something that we can look down the road and do a little bit more community outreach and just the education to the community as to your policing thoughts and kind of hopes for the community. I know we've had some personal conversations, Nick, you and I, and really focusing on the community-based policing and everything, but just getting that information out to the public as a whole and having some dialogue back and forth as to how that might look in a community such as Rutland, because Rutland is not Worcester, Rutland is not Boston, Rutland's not even Holden. So I don't know if that's something that you feel comfortable doing at some point. I think there has to be a very fine line. And Jessica, I don't know if you feel like that would be well received. We are a mixed race couple also. So my husband is not white. So we've experienced some things in the whole district as well. So.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you again. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a good place to put a reminder. If you haven't yet filled out your census card, please do. We've been really pushing for that, Anita and I, it's a great way to show the impact that it could actually have. So, thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll do a second call for public comment. Actually, I guess this is the third call for public comment. Mike, anyone?
Not that I see. Again, if you are interested in public comment, there is a reactions option at the bottom of your screen, either on a mobile device or on a personal computer, laptop. You just click on that. It looks like a smiley face with a plus sign, and click either of the two icons. Those will show on my screen, and I will be able to see that there. Or if you are on a telephone, you can unmute yourself and just let us know, because there is no way to do that from a call-in option. So just unmute yourself and let us know.
All right, I'm going to keep moving. We do have probably some input from the chiefs. There's somebody on the phone. You hear that, Mike?
Yes, if your number ends in 2326, you are the one we are talking about.
Hi, this is Kim from National Grid. I lost my connection, so I had to call in.
Okay. Hi, Kim. All right, we are about to start. So if everybody could go to their drive, you have poll hearing documentation. I will hereby open the hearing, which is a request for pole and wire locations, as noted on the documentation. And Kim, do you want to just jump right in and explain to us what we're looking at? Most likely the majority of us are going to jump down to that map.
Okay, you have the map in front of you?
Yep.
I do.
Okay, I believe that I did see Joe, the DPW director. He's in the meeting as well?
Yes, he is here.
Okay, great. So this is a pole line extension for a new residential customer on Kenwood Ave. They don't have an address yet, so it's listed as 0 Kenwood Drive. Sorry, not Avenue. And so we're going to need to extend the pole line by 3 poles. Now, according to the picture, it's zigzagging. Now, the picture is not to scale. The reason that it's crossing the road, it doesn't look as exaggerated in person as it does in the map, is because we try to avoid cutting as many trees down as we need to. So I have already spoken with Joe about this, and he has been out there and taken a look at these pole locations, and we've come to an agreement. I did move one stake that was by a farm entrance. I moved that about 10 feet so that that's nowhere near the entrance anymore. And he was, and the last time I spoke with him, he was fine with installing the poles.
Okay, so just to be clear, and Joe, we're going to be asking for your recommendation. This is the installation of, as noted, P54, 55, and 56 on Kenwood Drive.
Yeah, can I speak directly through the chair? I did review the submittal from National Grid. We did have a healthy rapport. There was some concerns about a farmer's field access. They've addressed that. And there's also concerns about the distance the pole is set relative to the edge of the pavement for snow storage. And I believe that's in the memo that I sent, Mike. Does the board have a copy of that memo?
You should have that in your folders. If not, let me know. I might have to change the sharing settings if you don't.
It's dated June 1st, 2020.
It's not under the poll hearing, Mike, so I'm not sure.
Okay, I will take
Having
that.
said that, we've got pretty accurate, we've got pretty good documentation, and I did recommend to go forward with the design as we've just discussed it. The memorandum would just clarify it so you'd have a record.
Well, I'm ready to move forward if Joe's okay with it.
Yeah, so the hearing is technically still open. If there are any questions from the board or questions from the public, if there are any interested parties, this is the time. Okay, hearing none, we're closing the hearing. And
I have a question for Joe.
Okay.
Joe, I was just wondering, the last thing that you talked about, as far as the pole locations, not the access to the farm, but the other thing that you mentioned about the snow removal.
Yeah,
Did I address everything?
Say again, please.
Did I address everything for you?
Yes.
To move forward?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Just one quick thing. The design maintains the spirit of the tree-lined street. There's a lot of beautiful, healthy trees out there. It does maintain that. And I just wanted to make sure that was said.
For the board members, if you go to your folders and refresh on the poll hearing page, it was listed under restricted. That's why you couldn't see it. It should be all set.
Are there any questions? I think we were about to close the hearing and we sort of stopped. Hearing none, the hearing is closed, and we can entertain a motion now for the installation of the poles and approval.
I'll make a motion for the installation and approval of the poles as presented and recommended by our DPW Director, Joe Buckley.
Walker second.
Thank you. Roll call.
City, aye.
Walker, aye.
Billings, aye.
Whitman, aye.
Dib, aye. Thank you very much. All right, Kim, I think you are all set. These will be signed. Mike, I would say are you gonna put them out tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're already out in the annex breezeway, to be honest with you. So if you feel like you want to go out after the meeting tonight, feel free.
Thanks. All right, next under Section 7, Petitions, Applications, Awards, Presentations is Section B. The Milk Room Brewing Company has an application for 9 one-day liquor licenses.
And Mr. Kevin Jarvie from Milk Room Brewing Company is here.
Kevin, do you have anything you would like to speak on in terms of your application?
Yes, hi. I just wanted to let everybody know that my hope is this is the last 9 that we'll have to put out there. My attorney I spoke with on Thursday believed that we should be able to. His biggest fear was getting at the town level. So I'm still learning on this too, but his fear was not at a state level. It was making sure that the town would approve the next level license for me. So, and I assured him that I didn't think that would be a problem once we have the state approval, that we could submit it back to the town. And then the next meeting, I hope, in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I will be asking for the approval of the town on the full license.
Which is the correct process. We did check with legal counsel on that. Once the state approves it, we just have to ratify what the state has said, and then you could have a full operating liquor license at that point.
So I guess I just have a question through the chair, if I could. on the liquor licenses. Just looking at this, and then we also have in our folders recommendations from the health agent and our fire chief. Moving forward, I guess, Kevin, I guess what is the plan to kind of address some of those concerns? I'm not sure if, were you privy to these? Did you see these, or?
Kevin, this is the discussion we had the other day where Rich went over and just said when you go back inside, you need an occupancy permit for the inside.
Correct. Mitch, just so you know, I mean, you can see behind me, you know, I got little openings. I got some boards I need to put up inside. So there's just some real honestly, I don't want to sugarcoat it, but some minor details that I just need to finish on the inside to get my final occupancy permits through Willie and through the town. And then once that's done, and that should be done hopefully before. I talked to Willie last week, and I also had Mr. Stevens over here last week. So I think we're very close to finalizing everything we need. In a couple more visits from them, I should have the occupancy permit, plumbing permits, electrical permits, all of those signed off on. But these coming up, there isn't any intent on having people on the inside of the facility. It's all going to be outside, as per state regulations at this point. So again, after this with the full license, I won't be coming to you for approval of my full license unless I have my full occupancy permits and all of my electrical, plumbing, and other permits in line. Along with the full license.
Just, I mean, the main concern with the occupancy, and again, I want to go on record and say that I really support what you're doing over there. The sprinklers were the concern I think that was raised. Is that going to be addressed by just limiting the occupancy, or are you installing a sprinkler system in that facility?
That is a building code.
Right.
I don't think I can. Maybe Chief Knipe can speak to it, but I believe my limit is 99 inside of this building.
So the way the building code is written is it's per the square footage of the building. I don't know what the person per square footage allocation is, but if you hit 100, that triggers sprinklers. If you're at 99, then you don't need the sprinkler system.
But that number is generated by square footage, Mike? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, the occupancy number is generated by the square footage. And Seth, if you want to verify that, you can. But from my read today, that's what the building code said. But yeah, and just as Kevin, you just said it, with the current regulations, indoor brewery activity is not available until phase 4. It's actually called out specifically on the with the notation that indoor brewing companies are meant for congregating together and getting together with a group of friends to have a beer together and things of that nature. Outdoor activities are fine under the current executive order. It's just you can't do anything inside, like you know. But just for the people at home that were wondering what those regulations were, I just wanted to explain that.
Kevin, can I just ask, I'm just looking through the health agents list, and some of these things are relevant to what your plan is for these next 9 licenses, which is to do an outdoor event. So he specifically noted that the food truck you have in mind is an approved food truck vendor, that you will be required to have adequate portable toilets, including handicapped accessible, portable water, seated at a table with no more than 6, tents with open sides, tables spaced 6 feet apart. Are you ready for all this?
You broke up a little bit at the very beginning, so I'll just repeat what I understand. I have the food truck that we got from Rapscallion was permitted last year in the town of Sturbridge. He went through. We have to add a suppression system to that food truck to have that up and going. I've also spoken with Adam at Off the Hook, and as well as with Captain Ron from the previous company, and Mr. Stevens is aware of that. So these next 9 could include my own, but also Adam booked in for the 3rd, 4th, the 27th, the 28th. So he's there for 4 of them. Captain Ron's there, all the other ones. So in addition to my own, I will have 2 other licensed food trucks here during those hours. Outdoor canopies, we've got 5 right now. We've got, we're only going to look at about 20 tables. We might only do 10 tables that first Wednesday. And we're going to have reservations. 2-hour blocks was our plan. If 10 tables go well, then maybe we'll open it up a little bit more, but we weren't going to do any more than 20 tables. And as you know, you've been here, there's plenty of room outside, and each one of those tables would be under a canopy with no sides and 6 feet apart. We have, we do have the handicapped accessible bathrooms and also wash stations. What was the other?
I think you can.
ADA issues. And then the other thing that the health agent notes too is just the concern about bringing, a large crowd into the town regarding the town's current COVID caseload, which I guess, it's a valid concern. I understand you're trying to do everything the right way. But it's just, again, we just have concerns here that were sent to us by the fire chief and the health agent, and we're just trying to flesh this out to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
And a lot of them, Kevin, they just deal with the regulations that are currently in place. So it's, you don't have to have a tent, but if you do, it just can't have sides.
Right.
And the tables just can't have more than 10 people at them, and they have to be minimum 6 feet apart. But what Rich is saying here is the further apart you can get them, the better, just because we don't want to make a scene where someone could say, oh, I got COVID at Milk Room.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I was just going to say, if it would, we could limit the amount of tables. I would be okay. We had thrown out 20, but if you think that's a lot and it's 10, and it wouldn't be 10, we were going to do maybe 10 tables with 6, because that's what an 8-foot picnic table is. That's what we have. We don't have tables that will even seat 10. So we were going to have 10 tables of 6, 3 or 4 tables of 4, and then a couple tables for 2, with a total of 20 tables. But it wouldn't even be 20 times. There wouldn't even be 120 people here during each 2-hour block. I think it would be closer to less than 100, all outside, front, back. So I've been more than willing to set up some stuff or do a better diagram to show Mr. Stevens and the fire chief. We've got the space in the back to have people 50 feet apart. They don't have to be anywhere near each other.
Is your retail location going to be open during these events, Kevin?
That wasn't the plan, no. We do some meat sales, but we can still do those with pickup as we always have, and they can just let us know what they want, and they can stand outside and we can grab them. I don't really want any, same as what Michael just said. I don't want to be 2 weeks later, all of a sudden I'm on the news. I'd rather not people were in the barn during these hours.
Your insurance doesn't cover that anyway, so.
No, I don't think it does. I don't think anybody's insurance covers any of this stuff, so. No, our intent is to have only staff inside the building during these hours.
So, Chief Knipe, I don't want to put you on the spot, but obviously we're all reading your memo as well. Certainly Stone Cow opened this past weekend. I know they expressed, public concerns about how hard it was going to be to try to get everything to go well and to follow all of the regulations. Are you hearing enough, especially based on the sort of things we know need to happen for his inside operations relative to them being related to what he's looking for right now?
Sheila, I would just like to go on record that the next batch of licenses that you issue for outdoor activity, if the restrictions are lifted in phase 4 before the end of those 9, I would just like to hold him to the 9 outside and no indoor activity until he has a full occupancy permit.
And Seth, I think you had noted in your memo, it was really just the issue with the spring. Is that the main concern, is the sprinkler system and the fire alarm system?
No, when Mr. Jarvie first came into the building department with a plan, he had a certified plan review and code review done by an engineer. And the plan at that time that was presented to the building inspector and myself was a much smaller plan than what ended up being built. So the project got a little bit bigger than what was originally proposed to us. So we just want to make sure that a plan review is done again, because there is a considerable amount of square footage in the building that may change some of those requirements that the engineer had originally proposed, because he was originally proposing less than 50 in the building. And with the amount of space that's available now, you potentially could have more than 50. And I just want to make sure there's adequate fire protection. I'm not really worried about a sprinkler system unless it goes over that 100. And I don't see it going to the 100, but it will definitely be over 50.
Thank you. And just the last question, I just have a question through the chair. You know, we're talking about breweries and retail locations, and we haven't really seen anything about that. I know, Kevin, you have to apply for a certain license through the town, so you don't have to keep coming back for these one day. The retail, everything like that, I'd imagine that, like Seth said, there was some sort of site review and everything was kind of reviewed and looked at, and we're working on that stuff. Is that where we're at with that?
You broke up just a little bit, but as far as the original plan that we had was a remodeling of the existing milk room and then adding retail space. And as Chief Knipe said, it did get a little, the walls got moved a little bit as we were kind of going, and that's 100% my own fault, but it wasn't done. It was not done intentionally. It just kind of happened as it went. We used a little more space than we originally thought. But the general concept was still there, was never to have, no offense to Stone Cow, I'm not looking to be that. I don't want to have 2,000 people through here on a Saturday. That's never was my intent. My original intent was to fill growlers, offer a place for people to come and hang out and congregate, and then as you realize people aren't just going to do that. We had to get to that pint pour aspect to be able to make this a feasible business, to be honest with you. So that's why in the intermediary, I don't want to say it's an excuse, but that's what ended up happening is we realized that we had to be able to do that. And that's when we started talking with the lawyers, the licensing. So I can absolutely have the engineer come back. It's the same gentleman that's working on my septic design. So I'm going to have him on the project all the way right along, and I'll have him go back through and he'll do the code review just to make sure that the additional areas that we added are added in there. And I think that the chief and the building inspectors will be happy with his work. They were pleased with it before. We just went a little bigger, as they said. So I can make sure that gets done quickly as well.
So then what the motion that the board would need to make is that the approval of the licenses with the condition that they are for outdoor consumption.
And then Seth, did you want to add there was a caveat about if the last ones kind of go into stage 4, do we want to add kind of an amendment to that if we make that motion to cover that?
Well, that's what I tried to say with the condition that it's for outdoor.
Okay, so that will cover everything. All right.
Yeah, Mitch, I think that would cover it perfectly.
Wayne, did you have your hand up? I just want to. Okay, sorry.
All right, so Kevin, I think you're hearing a pretty clear path forward, which is the expectation is that the town would not see you have any inside events at all until you have your inspections done. You've got a little work to do before those can get done, before you can get your permitting for an internal thing. I wouldn't expect, we're very close to 4th of July. Obviously, we know phase 4 isn't coming anytime super soon. So as far as Chief Knipe's last request that, your 4th of July, those last few dates on these one-day liquor licenses might coincide. I'm not sure. Mike, is that right? I don't think phase 4 is set to be.
Right now, phase 4 is slated for September.
Yeah. So I think you've got some time, Kevin, but you definitely are gonna have to cross your T's and dot your I's. But I think you kind of heard that.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned, after these 9, I don't foresee anything again in July. It's possible, but again, we make all the beer we can, and then if we can sell it all in these 9 days, it's gonna be another month until we open up again. So after this and from now until then, and I think we'll be in really good shape. It gives us a good 6, 7, 8 weeks to get everything done, and then we can go for, hopefully we'll have our full license come August.
Okay. And just as a note, when everybody is looking at these dates and times, we are looking at a noon to 11 p.m. stretch. And if there are no other questions, we could enter entertain a motion.
Just one last thing to throw out there. The noon to 11, that does meet the statutory limits. Kevin, you can technically go till 2 a.m., but 11 is fine in terms of how late you can go.
Okay, so just real quick, because there were concerns, I'd be more than happy to make the motion. But Seth, I know that you're here. I don't think the health agent's on the call.
No, he wasn't able to.
With the outside approvals for these, would you be comfortable with the town moving forward and issuing these as our fire chief and de facto health person?
Yes, I would at this time.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the one-day licenses put forth by Mr. Jarvie on the condition that the events are held strictly outside, per the recommendation of the health agent and the fire chief.
Stillings, second.
Any other discussion? If not, roll call.
Or City, aye.
Walker, aye.
Stillings, aye.
Whitman, aye.
Dib, aye. Unanimous.
Thank you.
These licenses will be in the annex of the community hall building by 9 a.m. tomorrow. All 9 licenses need signature by the board, and that doesn't fit in the breezeway. So there's the table right next to the door. The board members can come on in and sign all those there.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Moving on, Mike, we have your administrator update next, but we want to try another time to get our chiefs out of here.
That works for me. Seth, Chief Knipe is also here for the interdepartmental transfers.
Okay. So let's, why don't we get through the interdepartmental transfers as the business, and then we will move on to the public safety recognition. How does everybody feel about that? Why would we go in order? So if everybody could pull up their interdepartmental transfers, there are, how many, Mike? 2?
2.
And Chief Knipe, would you like to speak to these?
I would be happy to. First one is a transfer from ambulance overtime wages into on-call fire wages in the amount of $5,000. This is to cover costs that have exceeded what we had budgeted for our on-call firefighters. We've had significant number of increase of calls and significant calls that required their help. So we're just looking to get us through this last month of June with that transfer.
Can I get a motion on the first transfer? That's for the $5,000.
So I'll make a motion to transfer $5,000 from account 231-5122 ambulance overtime to account 220-5120 fire call wages.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
This was approved by the Finance Committee last Thursday.
Great. All in favor?
City, aye.
Walker, aye.
Stillings, aye.
Whitman, aye.
Dib, aye. Unanimous. Great. Seth, the next one.
Okay, the last one is a transfer from ambulance overtime to a fire new equipment account. As you can remember, last fall, we got awarded the SAFER grant to hire new full-time staff. During that time period, there was some ancillary costs associated with hiring the staff. And I anticipated that with hiring the staff, we would see some significant savings in overtime. And so instead of bringing forth an article at the fall town meeting to purchase new turnout gear, I held it off until now to see what our savings would be to basically be able to transfer internally to cover the cost. So that's where the savings came from, and that's why we have this surplus at the end of the year. If you noted in next FY21's budget, the overtime budget for the fire department has been cut in half due to the savings we have seen with the increased staffing.
That equates to around $45,000.
Great.
I get a motion on this transfer?
A motion to approve transfer as presented.
Can I
I'll
have a
second.
Thank you. And for the record, that's $22,880. Is there any further discussion?
This was approved by the Finance Committee last Thursday.
Thank you. All in favor?
City, aye.
Walker, aye.
Stillings, aye.
Waitman, aye.
Dib, aye. Chief, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's move on to public safety recognition. Mr. Stillings.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity. So I had reached out asking that this be placed on the agenda for a couple of reasons. First of all, Mr. Moses here. Moses is ready. Plaque's ready. The engraving's ready. It's ready to be presented and proudly posted in one of the town buildings in there. The officers and public safety staff of our town, we just underwent a loss of a family member, Officer Sanji. And as part of the grieving process and their recovery, coupled with the current sentiments that we are experiencing in the United States, I think it's important that we as town leaders reinforce, as we often do through our chiefs, but reinforce to our public safety staff the valuable assets that they are to us here in Rutland. I think it's important that we extend to them at this time the recognition of what they've gone through with their own loss and the exemplary job that they've done during this whole process. So I had reached out and asked that perhaps a letter from the board to each of our public safety, specifically the police, and I would also like to include fire and EMS in there, just recognizing their exemplary service during these tough times. And I would like to present that to them in some sort of meaningful ceremony or a venue, if we could, knowing that the Moses Howe Award is still ready and it needs to be presented, keeping in mind that what we had originally planned for up at the Moses Howe gravesite would be, phase 3 or phase 4 type of venue that we're not ready for. But because of the times that we're experiencing immediately, I would like to, well, first of all, recognize the great draft letters that our town administrator wrote. I think it's perfect. I have no changes on them. They're in the inclusions for this meeting, if you take a look at them. So I would ask that our peer members of the select board take a look at those draft letters, and I would like to have unanimous motions to sign such a letter for each of our public safety staff. And then I would like to have a conversation between the TA and the two chiefs to see if there's some sort of a meaningful venue where a good portion of the fire and police could be available in front of the fire station to present these certificates of appreciation and letters of recognition and the Moses Howe Award. So that was it. So that's what I'm presenting to my peers here with the select board, specifically with the letters. I would like to see some support that the select board sign the draft letters that's presented by the TA. So.
The other two certificates that are included in there are ones for Officer Jessica Tino and for Mr. Jake Petz, who were the two individuals that organized the Ride for Sanji in early May, a month ago today.
I would also like to discuss perhaps the inclusion of our police chief in some sort of a certificate of appreciation and recognition for what he has gone through during the process. So that's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure how to put that in words. So in your folders, you have a draft public safety recognition letter. If everyone is comfortable with the letter as Mike has drafted it, we can make a motion to have that signed and make sure that it is addressed to whoever the board is looking as far as breaking that out individually or by department or whatever. And then we also have, we'll need the motion to sign the 2 certificates for the thanks for the Sanji event.
I'll make a motion to sign the letter as written. I think it's addressed to all of the departments, so I think it's appropriate. Mike, you did a nice job. I'll also include in that motion, if I can bundle them together, Sheila, signing of the certificates of appreciation. You know, those 2 individuals did a pretty amazing job pulling that event together. Huge event. So I'll make that motion, Jeff.
Thanks, Mitch.
Do I have a second?
Second, with a question.
Yep.
We're going to send them individually, so each individual will get one for their personnel file.
Correct.
That's what I would like to see.
Very good.
Just sign one, and then I will copy them in and write everyone's name on them.
Mitch, is that in line with your original motion?
That enhances my original motion, so that makes it better. So we'll go ahead.
All right, all in favor?
City, aye.
Walker, aye.
Stillings, aye.
Waitman, aye.
Dibb, aye. Unanimous. Chiefs, would you like to say anything?
Nick, you're muted.
I am unmuted now.
Yes, you are.
Thank you very much. It's been great to get the support from the board. It's been a difficult road since losing John, but I'm going to continue to march. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
We appreciate you sticking with us. You know, we tried, and it's 7:12. If
not too bad, actually.
Yeah, I suppose, all things considered. Obviously, you are very welcome to stay with us. Chief Naib, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
All right. Thank you both very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you guys.
Choose to leave us. We're trying to get people out of here, so let's go to, I think the reason why Dave George is here, is that a fair statement, Mike?
The warrant article. And then we have Joe and Neil. Is that you? Is that Neil Viner? I believe they're here for the ACO.
They're here for, sorry, what? Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true. All right. So you know what? Let's go with DPW. Joe Buckley, administrative consent order, which is under new business number 131 and is in your file under administrative consent order 11.
While Joe gets his microphone on, this was reviewed by legal counsel and approved as is.
Can I speak directly, or do I need to go through the chair?
Go ahead, Joe. It's all you.
Thank you. Mr. Nicholson, has everyone received the document?
Yes.
Chance to review it?
Yep.
All right. I'll try and be brief and direct, and if possible. What you have in front of you is the administrative consent order issued by Mass DEP. This is the draft. It hasn't actually been signed yet, so it's not a real document. And basically, it's a step between where we are currently with our moratorium and where we need to get to have a new Water Management Act permit. Basically, what DEP is doing with the document is they're allowing us to legally violate our current permit, which that means in plain English, they're allowing us to legally withdraw more water than we were permitted to do. The first step gets us in the document. It's done in phases or in steps. The first one allows us basically to cover all of the existing development we have ongoing in town. And then the second one leaves room for some additional use of water out of Muskapog Pond. To do that, they've had put some restrictions in here, and if you read it, a lot of it has to do with irrigation, drought management, but there's some other common sense stuff in there. The quarterly reporting, we currently do that report annually, and their hope is by doing quarterly reporting of comparing how much water we've pumped to how much water we've actually sold, we'll have a better chance of finding more leaks or finding more problems. What drives the bus on the Water Management Act permit, which is the end goal, is you have to have your unaccounted for water, which is leaks or water that you didn't bill for, below 15% for 3 consecutive years. We had 2 options on the table. We could wait another 3 years and continue to violate, or we could go this route. And this, I think this is a better way. Some other things that DEP has asked for that may not be so popular. They're going to ask us to do less watering. They're going to ask us to consider proposing a bylaw that speaks to irrigation. We don't necessarily have to support it through this document, and I'm not advocating for that, but it's a good step forward. If it's all right, Mr. Nicholson, I think I'd like to entertain some questions.
It's good with me if it's good with Sheila.
It's good with me. Who has questions? This is a lot.
It is a lot, and it's been it's probably been 6 months in the process. DEP had been doing some review about how we do business here in town, and they had called out several mistakes of how we do water operations or improvements we had to make. And myself and the staff have really worked to clean it up a lot. And what happens is they called me up and they basically said, look, there's some stuff we've identified as problematic, and if you don't address it, we're going to put it in the order. So all that's really left in here is things that we weren't able to address in that time frame.
I will say too, when Joe and I entered into initial discussions about this, the initial amount we were afraid of getting was $500,000. So to see this number written into the consent order, it was actually a pretty good surprise. I'll say that. But with the amount of stuff that they told us we need to invest into our system and just update. And again, this just needs to show that we put an effort into working towards these measures. Because we propose a bylaw does not mean we have to pass the bylaw in order to be in full conformity with the ACO. Administrative consent order. I did the acronym thing again, but I will try to explain every one I use.
So Joe, when I was reading through it, and sort of reliving it in my head, we went over our 0.37 for quite a few years, and we were hearing about it. We finally got to a point where we were bringing those numbers down. Obviously, this past year might have been one of our lowest, right? 2019 at 0.34. That was the good news for me. It was good to see that, and to see that the DEP was sort of taking us and the strides that we had made and saying, well, here's a path forward. So I think my questions to you are this: when I look at some of the requirements, this is a strict schedule. You've got requirements that are going to happen in October the 31st, November 30th, and December 31st. These are big. Initially, I thought this was 2021, but it's not. It's this year. So these are huge projects for your department to take on. I just want to note that. It's really a big deal. And then as far as the bylaw goes, just as a note, and once I reread it, that's letter H on page 4. A best effort to include in Rutland's municipal bylaws a ban on new or expanded residential irrigation systems. You must submit to DEP a copy of the warrant article and the results of the town meeting vote. So that means, looking at this, we have to look forward to a special town meeting prior to December 31st in order to report that back. They're big. They're doable. It's great to see them. I appreciate all the work you did with Mariel Stone, but I just wanted to point them out sort of for the record.
A couple quick things. A lot of this is stuff we should be doing anyways. So I think the bulk of is prudent. And again, it's a draft. So we do have the ability to push back if need be. So we could probably push back on the bylaw date if you wanted some more time.
I don't know how the board feels. That would be the only one that I would ask for more time on, if only because of what we are going through right now relative to the pandemic. It is entirely possible that if there's a second wave, that just having essentially a fall town meeting by December 31st might be very difficult.
I guess to that point, Sheila, I mean, if we are okay with this document otherwise, other than the dates, Joe, this is a question for you. I mean, can we okay this, and then once we have a clearer picture 4 or 5 months down the road, to Sheila's point, what that's going to look like, we can then go back to DEP and say, look, we need a little bit of time on this because of X, Y, Z, or do we have to do that now? I think if you're telling us, and a lot of this stuff looks like, to your point, stuff that we should be doing anyway and stuff that's best practice, I mean, this gets us to where we need to be as a community. Moratorium is not a permanent solution, obviously. We've known that for a long time. I'd rather go ahead the way it is now and try to be ambitious with it. And then if we have to make changes, if we have that ability, to Sheila's point, in the uncertain world we're living in, we can address it when we get a little bit closer to it.
I think I would echo all of your concerns. And there is some room in the document if you look at it close enough legally to be able to apply for extensions. And what I've found so far with the folks you mentioned through the chair, Muriel Stone and Mary Jude Pigsley, I find them to be very reasonable people. It's just you have to document, and stay in good contact. They like to see, consistent effort. And the staff has made great strides to date so far. So I think it is doable.
And Joe, you're happy with the number that they gave us, which is a .43 for calendar year 2021 and beyond. I'm not the.
What I can tell you to the chair or to the group entire, that's the one thing you really can't negotiate with DEP on. They weren't going to walk on that number. And they had good reason, and they had good legal precedence to do that. A lot of it has to do with they're not the folks who issue that number. That's the Water Management Act permit, and that's a different document from what DEP issues. I think it's actually issued by DCR.
Can you, Joe, can you qualify or quantify that number other than the number itself? I mean, where does that put us in terms of how long, as most communities in this area were growing, I mean, how long does that number, where will that take us?
I had done that number previous. I'd say maybe 200 homes, or between 200 and 250 homes. From where
so we've got probably like 7-8 years potentially, yes, if we're growing at a similar rate that we are now.
But the other thing that I want to also call out on all this is fire protection. As the town grows, you need more fire protection, and your system has to expand. There's no way around that.
Okay. So.
And I wouldn't go with 7 or 8 years. I'd be conservative and say more like 5.
Okay, I was being optimistic, but
yes,
I should know better by now. Into this year. Thank you. I know that this took a lot of work between your staff and you and Mike to get here, so certainly can appreciate what it took to get here.
I know we have our chief water operator here. Did he want to make a comment about any of this? Neil, are you happy?
Very happy. Joe, Director Buckley has done a great job on putting this together, and I think we can accomplish everything that DEP wants, and we'll move forward.
So are we looking for a motion to sign, or to give Mike the authority to sign on behalf of the board?
One the board has to sign.
Yeah.
Can I just add one quick thing? And if you are going forward to sign, or you're going to make a motion to sign, I think it's great because what it does is it puts into practice a document that'll get you to where you need to be 2 to 3 years from now to go after the Water Management Act permit, to have the legitimate number we're talking about. So it puts into it holds our feet to the fire to make sure that stuff happens.
Mike, so just to clarify, the document that they sent over, page 8 of 8, is actually your signature. Yeah.
That's why I asked. I figured it was just we had to give Mike the permission.
Yeah.
I could easily be confusing documents. There's a lot of documents I've been having to deal with the past week with the pandemic and everything else. So yes, this would be authorization from Mike.
All right. So I'll make the motion to authorize Mike to sign the let's see what you call it here, the executive order, executive office of energy and environmental affairs, I guess draft presented to us.
It's an administrative consent order.
I'm sorry, to sign the administrative consent order as presented to us.
Do I have a second?
Stillings, second.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? All in favor?
City, aye.
Walker, aye.
Stillings, aye.
Waitman, aye.
Dib, aye. Unanimous. Joe, this is huge.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's great. Really awesome.
Wow.
For all the work, Joe and Neil and everyone.
Yeah, Joe, I gotta say you were a lightning bolt on this one, making sure we did it. So thank you very much for all the work you did.
Thank you.
As you say, you just have to make sure we stay on the straight and narrow, and you make sure the town does everything it's supposed to do.
I think I think everyone here involved has made a really good step forward. Thank you.
Okay. Town meeting warrant article recommendations, because again, God forbid we go in order of the agenda. So that is number 110 under X, old business, and that is why our last department person, department head Dave George, the planner, is here, and I assume our planning board chair. So, who would like to start on this?
Give them both a second to unmute.
Yep. And just for reference in your files, that's under the town meeting documents, as well as the warrant articles. Actually, there's two areas information will be in. So I don't know if Dave maybe stepped away from his phone. Mike, can you see if he's coming? If not,
Sure.
No, I'm sorry, I'm here.
He's here. All right.
I'm just here as the board is going to hopefully take a position on this tonight. So I'm just here as part of that process.
If there's any questions, in other words.
If there's any questions or what have you, yes.
Okay, so let me back up. Obviously, the board has had this discussion at least once before, which is that the select board historically actually did not take voted positions on any of the articles. There was sort of an assumption that in having placed the articles, there was support for them. However, there was not a vote that was listed. Many towns do it. We have certainly discussed it. We've done it once or twice. If we want to at least give Dave, Norm, whoever else would like to speak very specifically on the single zoning bylaw that's been placed, which is Article 8, the agricultural accessory use, we could do that now. The other option would be, if there are no questions for Dave and Norm, to sort of allow them the luxury of leaving, assuming no questions, when we actually go in order to give our vote on support of a given article. Or the board might choose to not take votes.
I say we had the discussion about the article and the bylaw a couple weeks ago when Dave made his presentation. Mm-hmm. We voted to place it, which I think speaks a little bit as to where our mindset was with that. I think we have boards that are designed to vet these things out, that take stances on them. I would just like to stick with that process, and I really don't feel like, it's been vetted by them. They've been working on it for a long time. We just saw it once last week or 2 weeks ago. So I would rather see the folks that deal with this take the votes on recommending or not. And we just place it and let the town vote.
I agree with that.
Mike, is my recollection correct? I think we placed all the articles unanimously. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, to Mitch's point, I think certainly, at that time, the board or you can make that statement that, Dave, I think my guess is Lexington probably went forward with doing this. Is that fair?
Well, it was my understanding that the board was going to be doing something tonight. If it was to take a position, then we're here for that purpose. If that's not the custom, then that's fine too. We're just here just in case. So.
Okay. So I think
for Dave and mine's first annual town meeting last year, the board did take recommendations on everything. So we both did think that was just common practice of the board.
Yes, yes, exactly, Mike. That's exactly right. Thank you.
It was obviously a very long meeting last year with a lot going on. I think in this case we've got a board placed, unanimous voted set of warrant articles, and that can be stated at the beginning of the meeting. So I think, Dave, to your point, you're hearing, I think, from the board that in placing these articles, you have the approval of the board as it stands.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much.
No, Sheila, I think just to correct, I don't feel comfortable with that. I think we placed the item. We had a discussion about the item. We haven't heard from any of the other boards that vet the items. So we just have an approval to place. I don't think really we want to take a stance, or I would rather not us take a stance having not heard from any of our other boards that kind of look at these things.
Okay, so that's a fair clarification that you had support in placing it.
I would just add today, if I could, just to jump in. Today we received a letter of support from the Agricultural Commission directed to the Planning Board in favor of this matter.
Great.
And your hearing is in 2 days, is that right?
That's correct. Wednesday night.
Oh, Wednesday night, excuse me.
Wednesday night. Planning Board Chair is with us. Norm, did you want to add anything? Good to have you.
Hi there. I guess the only thing I would say is that the Planning Board has taken a look, the bylaw subcommittee has taken a look at this thing, and with the exception of a couple of little tweaks here and there, we all seem to think that it looks pretty darn good. I just, just from my personal perspective, anything that's going to enhance agriculture and agricultural uses in the town is worth trying. And I don't know, I'm not going to say I have my ear to the ground all over the place, but I haven't heard really anybody talking against the concept of what this bylaw will try to do.
I just to address that, I appreciate that, Norm. So I think there were probably some concerns relative to timing and how the process tends to feel rushed or be rushed towards the end. Do you feel like you are now in a good place?
I think about the only thing that we're really waiting for is the public hearing on Wednesday, and it's always possible that something can come forth at that public hearing, but I don't see why it should. The whole concept is just positive. It's not restrictive, and it's I think going to allow the possibility of some very nice things to happen out here in Rutland. Kind of different from a lot of other bylaws that say no, you can't do this, but you can only do this if you do this, and whatever.
All right. And I think the FinCom, Mike, is that correct? They'll be talking about it after the public hearing to see if any commentary comes in.
Correct, on Thursday.
Substantive changes. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. We're going to try to start from the top and see if we can get through everything else. So that means, Mike, I think I'm handing the meeting over to you for the town administrator update.
All right. So just as an update on our COVID updates, as you will, we are in the process of installing all of the new materials that will be added to our buildings to ensure that when we do go full open to the public on July 1st, in cooperation with all of the regulations that are put in place, we are making sure all of our staff are kept safe. What this means is we have installed countertop plexiglass screens for the town clerk's office and the treasurer collector's office. Those are the two offices that have countertops that the public interacts on. Again, the reason for these shields is to prevent me talking to Anita and Damien in the town clerk's office from potentially spreading the virus on, if one, I don't have a mask on, or two, just accident. It just adds that extra level of protection. The other offices do not have countertop access. What the other offices have is they have brand new doors to the offices that have a window screen and a shelf added in. And it almost looks like a teller window where you have an area that allows you to hear each other back and forth. However, it also provides that plexiglass screen that's there to make sure that we have that level of protection for our staff members. Something that we keep getting calls about recently are the playgrounds. Now, yes, we are in phase 2, and playgrounds are allowed to reopen on the condition that if they reopen, they have to be sanitized daily. Director Buckley, Chairman Gilroy from the Board of Health, and our health agent, Rich Stevens, sat down just to talk about that process. And at this time, we just don't have the staff to make sure that we're cleaning the playground equipment every day. But the other concern is if if we say we clean every day at 6 and someone comes in and uses the equipment at 8 a.m. and then they leave, and another person comes in and uses the equipment at 9 a.m. and then they leave, we're not sanitizing in between each round there too. It's not to say we don't want to see the playgrounds open. I'd love to see the bags taken off the hoops and the gate unlocked at the playground. It kills me when I walk by and I see that there. But we need to make sure that the consensus around that group, particularly our members from the Board of Health, were that they'd like to ensure that if we do it, we follow the regulations that have to be in place for when that happens, and that's a Board of Health call for that one. Other than that, we continue to monitor our active cases. At this time, knock on wood, we do not have any active cases in the town of Rutland. We have those who have recovered, who are there, but we do not have any active cases at this time.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Where did we just see that there was 59 COVID cases?
That's how many we've had since January 1st. So that's had and recovered.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you for pulling up that number, Jeff. That's what I was looking at my other screen to try to find. So that
documents tonight. I'm trying to pull up which document was it?
It was in the health director's comments regarding the liquor licenses.
Got it.
So we are still continuing to work with the regulations that the Commonwealth have put forward. Again, the way to police the regulations is residents can contact the Department of Public Health, who then notify the health agent. The state has set up that process as a way to provide some sense of anonymity between the person who is making the complaint and whom the complaint is made about. We have received a couple of those. However, it's just a communication thing at the end. So when we get those, Rich just goes and talks to the business owner and lets them know, hey, these are the guidelines that are put in place. In terms of outdoor seating, the way that has been interpreted is unless the town has a bylaw that explicitly prohibits outdoor seating, it is allowed in this case under the current executive order. You see that with Cemetery Bar and Grill, who has gone outside recently to serve their food, and they are able to do that. They have to meet the specific requirements that we talked about earlier. No more than 6 people at a table. The tables have to be 6 feet apart. If you have a tent, it cannot have sides on the tent to ensure proper airflow. And then it is up to the institution itself to determine whether or not they place a time limit on the how long people are sitting there. That is why if you go to a cemetery, that there's a 75-minute limit for how long you can be there. Mitch, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a quick question, Mike, if I could. I know that we have we're looking at everybody's best interest here. Obviously, our restaurants are really feeling it for the last several months. I'm wondering, we're talking about restrictions as to how they have to implement their outdoor seating and the phased opening, the whole thing. Are we doing anything? I mean, I see that we have food trucks every week on the common, which we can get into a separate conversation about them eating into, no pun intended, our local restaurants revenue. But are they being held to any standard in terms of their practice and what they're doing with regard to any of these regulations?
Oh yeah, everyone has to be treated the same there. And it's a good thing to bring up too. So those 2 Rutland-owned food trucks that have been on the common just moved locations when the pandemic started because they were taking a hit just as well. So they reached out through the church organizations in towns and asked if they could move their locations just because of what they were doing there. With the idea that while there are a handful of restaurants in the center of town that do serve lunch, most that are in the center of town do not serve lunch options, particularly during the pandemic. So that was kind of the give and take.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up.
No. Excuse me, it's still my. Just want to throw out there that my office and myself, really, not my office, have received questions about my future with the town, given the results of Gardner's preliminary election. We are working, I am working with KP Law on that. One of the things that was called out when I first started, when speaking with Margaret and Bob, is that the town never adopted a formal transition plan, as other towns have done. Most towns do that as part of the town charter discussion, which I'm going to get into in the next part. That's what falls under the general updates in my town administrator update. The charter will normally say the line of succession is if the TA is unavailable due to either vacation, prolonged sickness, or something like that, this person takes over as acting TA and so on from there, or in different cases like that. This is something that I have been working on in the past year with a couple of the department heads, but we've never formalized it just because other stuff have come up, like the water and sewer issues, the pandemic. But it's something that we are now working at seeing how do we formalize as a result of this process. So as that gets closer, KP Law has said basically the discussion for the transition now can be with myself, the chair, and if board members have questions, feel free to give me a call at any time, but we'll release a formal transition plan if we need it at that time. It's nothing we need to release to the public, but we do want to let people know it is a discussion that we are having because it's a possibility out there, and we wouldn't be doing our jobs if we didn't at least plan for it ahead of time. But now we're seeing how does this carry over with our other department heads and those who don't have direct deputies, like Seth has 2 deputy chiefs. How do we make sure everything gets covered? And so it's something that we're having a broader look at now, rather than just the TA position. How can the town as a whole be more stable as this result? Leah, was that a hand raise or were you just, no, okay. And then the last thing that I wanted to bring up as an update, and the reason it's just as an update rather than an action item, is because one of our partners from the Collins Center wasn't able to join this evening, but actually, never mind, I do have it as an action item, so I will hold my town charter discussion until that time. But if there are any questions on anything that I have said so far, happy to answer them.
Anybody have questions for Mike? Okay. All right, we're going to move on. We have done our the interdepartmental transfers. Just to double check, on the town meeting warrant articles, we will not be taking voted recommendations. We are sticking with these sort of old school, we've placed them, and that was we gave our approval to place them to be considered. Is that fair? Okay. Under new business, Mike, we're back to you real quick, that town charter procedure.
Yes, so Leah did ask that we talk about the town charter discussion. If you remember, at the November special town meeting, we did appropriate the money to contract with a consultant for the town charter review. The consultant that was the cheapest was the Collins Center out of the University of Massachusetts, Boston. I did speak with Michael Ward, who is their executive director. He is on vacation this week, so he was unable to come in person, but he would like to come and talk to the board at an upcoming meeting with regard to what specifically comes next in the charter process. Particularly some things that he'd like me to mention before he comes in to meet with the board, just to get the board members to think a little bit, is the first step in this process would be the appointment of a charter committee. Now, statute specifically defines a charter committee versus a charter commission. A charter commission is an elected board who has a strict timeline under state law of 2 years, and then they must dissolve. And if they do not produce a charter going forward, they have to start back at step one. Rather, a charter committee is simply appointed by the select board to serve a term deemed by the select board in the charge that is approved by the board going forward. So you can put term limits on the time limits on those who are appointed, but they do not have a statutory deadline for when they have to get town meeting the final document, where the charter commission must have a document before town meeting within a 2-year time span. What the Collins Center highly recommends is that whomever the board appoints to a charter committee, the appointees be as quote unquote diverse as possible with terms of political beliefs, economic backgrounds, educational backgrounds, workforce experience, age ranges going on there, because you want to have something that paints a picture of the town entire. You don't want to have something that paints a picture of a specific group of 5 people. Some things for the board to think about is how would you like to write the charge and what would you like to see in that charge? How many people would you like to serve on this committee? How would you like the advertisement for those who would like to be appointed to be worded? And in the charge, do you want to limit anything that you would like the commission to work on? So for instance, right now, Rutland is considered what's called a common law town, which means that we run solely off of bylaws without a charter. A charter, any change to a charter requires a vote in a town election. However, a bylaw can change simply at any town meeting. The reason for having a charter, which is the town's equivalent to a constitution, is that it provides the foundation on which to build those bylaws off of and codifies the existing set of bylaws in a formal, concrete foundation on which the town can move forward on and provide more stability. That's why they really recommend that towns start looking at charters when you hit a population of 5,000, is because once you get bigger, it just helps solidify and make things more efficient and effective in your local government. However, the board can say, we want the charter committee to focus on everything but the zoning bylaw procedure, or we can focus on everything but the appointment procedure. So the board does have the ability to limit the scope of a charter commission, or you can just give them free range and see what they come up with, and then you have the ability to edit that document before it goes to town meeting, because that is the select board's purview as well. Are there any questions on anything I've said so far?
Thanks, Mike, for taking that on and following up. I know it's been something back and forth, and Margaret brought it up even before she left, the importance of a town our size and larger having a charter. So I know it's been something that's kind of been hanging over our heads. So thank you for getting the restart going.
Happy to. And again, Michael Ward from the Collins Center will be here at a meeting in the future when we can get that on the agenda. And he will have these specifics, but he wants the board to at least start getting the gears turning on these discussions to kind of, when he comes, there's some questions that can be asked that he can answer. And it's not the first time you're hearing the information, and it's kind of just overwhelmed and just being a sponge to soak in the information and not having time to process the questions that you'd like asked. Some charter committees and commissions that we've seen in the past include provisions that prohibit current appointees who are on town committees and commissions to try to get an outsider's view. Some limit it to only current committee appointees by the town to get a experienced point of view. Others have allowed people who were in town for a long time but have moved away to serve as ex officio on these charter commissions as an advisor to the board. And it's all really up to the will and the wish of the select board when it comes to how you'd like to see this board created. And we can get examples too to show you by that time. But again, these are just all things to start the gears turning.
Mike, do you think it's possible before this gets going that the Collins Center might be willing to update their timeline?
Yes, and they're already planning on that because the initial proposal that we have is from March of 2019 because it was initially proposed for the annual town meeting warrant and then moved to the fall special town meeting warrant where it was approved, and then the pandemic happened, so now we are here. So they are already working on updating all of that.
And then do you think they have a list of all communities either with charters or without? I guess whichever is smaller.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Something that everybody is going to want to see.
Yeah. If the board wants to see an example of a charter that the Collins Center has written, Director Ward oversaw the drafting of the Town of Hubbardston Town Charter. So if you'd like to see an example of one of the pieces of work that they've done, that's a one you can go for there.
All right. Thank you.
I did speak with the town administrator in Hubbardston about that process. Sorry, I forgot to mention this one there. He said he liked it, and what helped why you do not need an official consultant legally. It helps you think of the things that you just slipped because it's not something that normally goes into your mind. So for instance, working over there, they brought up having a military leave provision in the charter for employees. Now you could have a bylaw or a policy that says if a staff member joins the military and has to go off to basic training, you basically follow what the current regulations are at the state and federal level. But to solidify that, because again, not everyone is as familiar with the state and federal protections until it comes time for someone doing something wrong and then you cause a lawsuit. It just helps protect the town in the end because you have something town level that has that in there, so you follow that. So you may not realize some things that actually help add to the structure and strength of the town until you have someone who's done it multiple times before.
All right. Thank you. It'll be good to get that going, Leah. Under new business, we have done 128, the public safety recognition. Thank you, Mr. Stillings. Just a reminder, reappointments typically happen, or at least they start being discussed this time of year. Mike, I think your office has already kind of started that process rolling for all of the committees and commissions that are up for reappointment.
Yeah, so Laura will be reaching out to all of the chairs of each committee for recommendations per the town bylaw. In all of the board members folder, you have a spreadsheet with everyone who is an appointee of the Board of Selectmen. Laura has it specifically formatted that if the color is red next to a person's name, that means that they expire at the end of this fiscal year. We do want to point out that the reason this is happening so late is because the election got pushed back. And this is an action by the bylaws. It has to happen by the board following the election. So even though the appointments by their appointment date expire on July 1st, state statute says you continue to serve until either replaced or reappointed. So all of our commission members will still continue on in their roles until either replaced or reappointed. And those that are up for reappointment or those vacant seats can be found in that spreadsheet.
So if the board would like, this could be placed on the next regular select board meeting, which is the 29th. That is not to say that everyone will be ready. I mean, as Mike noted, this is a compressed schedule that started a little bit late. We've always, from any member, are up for reappointment as well as new people as well, make sure it gets advertised out to the public. But that would be the next meeting that it technically could go on, the full reappointment list.
The list that you have to also shows the dates going forward, so you can see how this trend will continue from year after year. Laura did some type of formula that the color coding of the spreadsheet corresponds to the date in which you open the spreadsheet. So today, everything that's red is something that's happening in calendar year 2020. If you were to open it in January of 2021, the color coding will automatically switch to everything that's in 2021 will color code to red there. So if you can't change those formatting styles, that is because it's specifically located like that.
All right, thank you. Moving on under new business, we have the town meeting documentation for the public. At the moment, that is a 2-pager, Mike, right?
Yes.
Within your file folder. You know, this is fairly straightforward at the moment. If anybody has comments for Mike or things that you'd like to see added, changed, whatever, please let him know. This is certainly a work in progress. Mike, I think you and I talked about, we obviously need to start getting information out to people relative to the way the meeting is going to go, yes. Right?
Yes. Say we did a walkthrough of the Glenwood site this afternoon, just to go through with the different public health agents, with Anita from the town clerk's office, her senior worker, and Damien, her assistant. The cable crew was there as well, just to try to work logistics. We have another meeting that's going to be scheduled for next week, so we can just go over the results of how that went. I can tell you the finance committee tasked someone to write up a notice to the public on, we're going into this town meeting like this with the intent that if we do have a special fall town meeting, this is what we'd like to see moving forward, and this is why we're putting forward what we are and what we are not. So they have undergone that process, and I got that this evening from Mr. Ted Purcell, and the finance committee will be taking an official look at that on Thursday. So we are working constantly on trying to get all the information out there. The vote clickers came in, as you saw at the last meeting, and we were testing them today. The radio seems to work fine over in the parking lot area, and as the logistics become finalized, we will go forward from there. If anyone would like to have a walkthrough of the site to see where exactly everything is going to go, please contact my office and we will set that up as soon as we can.
Excellent, thank you. We're gonna move on, skip past the things we've already done. Under number 132, we have the resignation of Karen Greenwood from both the RDIC and the Ad Hoc Bylaw Committee. You have her resignation letters in your Google Drive. And I would just entertain a motion at this time, and they can be for both.
I'd make a motion, this is Jeff, I'd make a motion that we accept with regret the resignation of Karen Greenwood from RDIC and the Ad Hoc Bylaw Committee due to her, I like that she wrote a letter explaining that she broke her legs and she's recovering, and we wish her the very best of health and recovery.
I'll second that for conversation. I just want to make a note. I worked with Karen in Worcester for a long time. You know, she served this country as a veteran. She's the epitome of community service. She's given so much to this community. So I really, I read this and I was taken aback. She's the type of person that, you know, you really like to see involved, and I'm wishing her well in her recovery.
And welcome home. She was just able to return home, so.
Yeah, definitely welcome home, and maybe hopefully she'll come back and have a little bit more ability to serve more. Not that she hasn't already done enough.
Yeah.
Could I have a vote, please?
For City, aye.
Aye.
Stallings, aye.
Whitman, aye.
And Dib, aye. Thank you, Karen, for everything. Is there any other business to come before the board? Mike, is there anything else?
Just a reminder that the annual town election is Monday. You are able to vote by mail now, and I know Anita and Damien are probably watching this, and I know I'm not going to get the exact number, but we have around 200 votes, between 150 and 200 votes that have already been turned in via the mail-in or drop-off box in front of the town hall. Those options are still available. Just make sure, just do know that if you do have a mail-in ballot, it must be received by the clerk's office by the close of polls on election day, which is Monday. And vote.
Right.
Thank you, Anita and Damien, for all they've been doing to just sort through all of the new COVID regulations that affect their office directly with the election and town meeting. Couldn't ask for two better people in that office to just keep the town running in that end, and they've been doing great, and I can't thank them enough.
They have been great gatekeepers to our democracy.
Yep, and thank them very much. Could I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
City, aye.
Walker, aye.
Billings, aye.
Waitman, aye.
And Dib, aye. It's 8 o'clock. Have a good night, everybody.